Kia karakia tātou. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina kina ki uta, ki mā taratara ki tai. E he ake ana, te atukura, he tū, he huka, he hauhu, tihei mauri ora. Morena everyone, and it is a really nice surprise to see the gallery full of amazing people who are doing phenomenal things in our community. So fantastic to see so many people here to awhi your speakers today. So thank you. I know there are many community organisations across Tāmaki Makaurau represented who are working with people doing great things to support communities around many sectors, including workers and housing, and I haven't got the list, but I'm assuming much more. So kia ora and thank you for being here, and great to see you. It does look a little empty in the room, but never fear, there are a number of committee members online as well. So we do have almost everyone here. I will just go through the apologies. So we have apologies from Councillor Fletcher for absence. We have lateness from Mayor Brown on council business. We have early departure from Councillor Filipaina on council business. Were there any other apologies? No? Councillor Filipaina, would you like to move the apologies?
Yordana, ngā mihi.
Seconder, Councillor Ferry. All those in favour? I don't think I have to accept the apologies. I mean, on the online attendees, but I can. There's a long list online. So, Deputy Mayor Simpson, our thoughts are with you for your loss this week. Thank you for attending, but we understand if you need to leave at any time. But thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
And kia ora to other committee members as well, and Hokura members, Edward Ashby, and I see member Henare online as well. Are there any declarations? Oh, kia ora, member Ashby.
Yes, just on item 6.1, the local board item, I will just step away for that item and hang out with my Westies probably.
Kia ora, member Ashby. Yeah, I don't consider it a conflict of any kind, but it does make it slightly awkward for you because you are both sides of that table, but I'm happy for you to do whatever you need to do during that time, so thank you for that. Confirmation of the minutes. Deputy Chair, Councillor Dalton will move. And a seconder? Anyone? Councillor Baker, all those in favour? Aye. Any opposition to that? No. Petitions, there are none. Public input, we have 2 lots of public input, I think. First up, we have our awesome CAB team. I've got Sylvia, Philippa and Michael written here, but there may be other people that I don't have your name, sorry, but if whoever would like to speak, come forward to the table. And if I don't have your name, I'm sorry about that. There are microphones in front of you. If you press the button on the right, that'll allow you to speak, and each time you've finished speaking, if you could just press the button again and it will turn off. Yep, there you go. So you have 5 minutes. We've got your presentation here. We also will have questions, no doubt, from committee members, but thank you so much for being here to represent the CAB and all your staff and volunteers across Tāmaki Makaurau. So kia ora. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. We're here to present the Auckland Citizens Advice Bureau strategic plan for 24-27. On my left is Philippa, and on my right is Michael, and I'm Sylvia, and we are all on the Auckland board, Auckland CAB board. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. For over 50 years, Auckland Citizens Advice Bureau has been providing advice and guidance providing advice and guidance to Aucklanders thanks to the generous support of Auckland Council. Auckland CAB is undergoing change to better tackle the unmet needs of Aucklanders, and we would like to partner with Auckland Council to achieve better outcomes for everyone. Through facilitated workshops and general feedback, all Auckland CAB volunteers and staff have had the opportunity to have input into this plan, and it is their plan. It won't. Yeah. Oh, sorry. This document is underpinned by the Citizens Advice Bureau New Zealand, CABNZ, and Te Ture Waitangi Treaty of Waitangi aims, principles and values. CAB is both a first port of call for information and sometimes a last resort for people who need help. Free and confidential information, advice and support on any topic to any person by landline or mobile, face-to-face at 32 branches in Auckland, by email or through our website. Our service is also available in over 21 languages. Oops. Oh, this is hopeless, isn't it? Sorry.
Sorry, it might be a little bit sensitive.
Volunteers not only empower and support individuals and whānau, they are also social justice champions. The insights they collect from recording every client inquiry provides invaluable evidence that is available to council to gauge mood and needs of our local communities. Some key facts. We helped nearly over 200,000 clients in Auckland last year, nearly 1.9 million hits on our information website from Aucklanders alone. Prisoners are given a number on which they can call specially trained volunteers for advice. 9% of our clients who seek support are Maori, and the majority of our clients are digitally disadvantaged and vulnerable. So currently, the majority of our interactions are face-to-face. Key facts: 95 is our service valuable? 95% of our clients would recommend our service to others. Social return on investment by Impact Lab study showed a $13.20 return for every dollar invested. Where ACAB is now and where we see ourselves in the future. What we do now is good, but we can do more. Today, people come to us, but many of the people who most need our services are unaware of what we have to offer. We need to reach out to them. So where are we today and where do we need to be in the future? We need to move to a 4-regional structure. We need to move more towards shared alliances to optimise resources and provide enhanced services to our community. Rather than individual learning, individual bureau to come together to share learning and training resources and knowledge. 9 incorporated societies create inefficient governance cost. For example, annual audits. Amalgamation would reduce these overheads. Inward-looking to outward-looking, we need to share more of our local initiatives across the whole of Auckland CAB to maximise the benefits to our community. Reactive to proactive. It was agreed amongst volunteers and staff that as well as people coming to us, we needed to focus more on reaching out to people. Our strategic priorities are shown here. The regional model, Auckland CAB's working together for better outcomes for clients. Volunteers, sufficient number of trained volunteers to resource extended services. Services that meet the needs of clients in a changing environment. Funding, sustainable funding that is flexible to achieve strategic goals. Awareness, reaching out to communities and people. There's the slide, sorry. You do have a copy. The journey has started. We have amalgamated 2 bureaux into North Shore and more work is on the way. Volunteers, we're seeing a steady rise in numbers of people as people become more comfortable in group environments. Services, we're currently working on a phone translation service which will hopefully be implemented, funding available across the whole of Auckland, and a rangitahi project, which is a youth project working on educational institutions with educational institutions and youth organisations. The funding model. We cannot deliver on this plan with the current funding model. our council representatives are working with us on this, and we're very grateful for their support. Awareness. The Trade Me campaign, which you may or may not have seen, this was pro bono work supplied by Stanley Street, very generously, and we had over 2,000 hits on the Trade Me website. We had media coverage and billboards all over Auckland. Thank you very much for your attention.
Kia ora, thank you very much, Sylvia, and thanks for the for this work, this constructive work. This is leadership from Citizens Advice Bureau. I know that it was a very stressful time last year when the budget proposed a full cut to the council share of their funding for all the work you do, and I'm glad we were able to work together and the community stood up and we kind of got that change and we didn't reduce your funding. But this, I think, takes us the next step across Tamaki Makaurau and moves us into a new space. Myself and Councillor Dalton, the Deputy Chair of the committee, have had a briefing from staff on this as well, but I think it's coming to committee maybe next month or for a workshop, and we'll be discussing the same thing, or July. So it's great to hear the direction from you all from the ground up, and we'll be no doubt working on that as a council as well. Are there any? There are questions. Councillor Watson.
Thanks. A great presentation. My question goes to the notion of need. You know, the general perception is that, you know, with technologies and computers, everything's easier now to contact people to get advice. I find it on occasions quite the opposite. So even if you're denied, if you don't have digital access, even if you do, trying to negotiate things can be really, really difficult. So is that what you're finding also, that in this technological age, ironically enough, there is more need for advice because more people are potentially disadvantaged by not having, you know, the requisite kind of access?
We do find that. You know, overall there is a section of the community which are digitally disadvantaged, and the CAB organisation as a whole has been making representations to central government about that issue for several years, you know. So, you know, we often, because we offer a face-to-face service as well as an online and a telephone service, you know, we're there to enable people to come and see us and to overcome that disadvantage in the best way possible.
Good, Councillor. Thank you for that. Councillor Filipaina.
Sorry, Chair. I know that Councillor Dalton put her hand up first, so my humble apologies. Morena koutou, ngā mihi ki a koe mō te mahi. I just wanted to say morena to you, but also thank you for your work. I've got two very quick questions and possibly a third, Chair. I'll be very, very quick. The funding from Council. Now, I know you're in negotiations with Council around funding. Have you been told, and don't know whether this is something that can be shared, have you been told how long that funding is for?
Not. We're expecting 3 years at least, but we haven't actually had any confirmation of that, no.
Chair, I know you're going to have a discussion. I think that'll be something at least that should be shared with us once you have your conversation with staff. The other question is, with this particular PowerPoint, and you've mentioned Citizens Advice Bureaus New Zealand, is this presentation or an iteration of it going to be shared with the government around your strategic plan? Because obviously the government are a big player in regards to funding.
Yes, in actual fact, CAB&NZ are well aware of this strategic plan. We've sent it to them, and I haven't quite done the presentation, but almost. So yes, I'm, you know, and CAB&NZ are in negotiation with government, so it's up to them to present it, and I'm trusting that they will. Yes.
Okay, and Chair, just to you. I've made this offer in regards to the work that was done last term with the Citizens Advice Bureaus with local boards and councillors just around the funding model. So, I mean, I've still got paperwork and working group minutes that's at least assisted with how the funding they went to the citizens of Waipiro. So I'm still there to assist. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you, Councillor. And I think, yes, Councillor Dalton and I had asked, you know, with the long-term plan and how everything covered over, but there's no threat to the funding, the way the contract grant may be written up based on the CAB's advice and the work through this presentation. And I think the way it moves forward, I think, is probably a more exciting conversation, I think, on the future of CAB, which may, hopefully, in the future, see more government funding coming that way. But that's obviously something that we've given feedback on, but we don't have any confirmation that would support that yet. So that will be discussed at the workshop. And as far as I know, there's not sort of anything hanging over CAB at this time. But we were waiting for this presentation and then the workshop post LTP to get that done. We would have liked to have it come before the LTP, but as you know, there was no space for any other work to come. So thank you. Councillor Dalton, Deputy Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you, Sylvia, Philippa and Michael. Congratulations on a new model for a way forward. My question is just asking you how the individual bureaus are responding to the new model. That's my first question. And the second is, do you think you require different volunteer skills for an outward-looking model as you go forward?
Delegation. Thank you for your sharing and caring. Thank you for your congratulations. I think the individual bureau are responding in different ways. They come with different strengths, and that's part of the process we need to work through across the region with those bureau and help them think about how they look outward. I don't know that we want to be looking for different volunteers. I think what we need to be thinking about with our volunteers is how we are open to all sorts of ways of delivering our services. And because the people we have a lot of strengths in this space, so you don't really want to throw them out and then try and find other new people.
I think it's great. I think the opportunity for existing volunteers to continue to learn and strengthen and grow is wonderful. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Kia ora. Thank you, Councillor Dalton. Just I guess a question for me, and it might be more of a Patsy question, but you know the way it was explained to us and the way you've explained it too, like that move from more individual siloed to the regional hubs and more information sharing. Do you see it improving sort of not only community development for our communities, but also for those volunteers, you know, to be able to come across and share more time together, and the expertise that they have, you know, can be utilised more right across?
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the things that we've started talking about in our workshops, was that, yes, we should be, at the moment, volunteers are assigned to one branch, one site. And we talked about the fact that, you know, there's nothing to stop us actually sharing those volunteers, and particularly, you know, if we're using digital devices, that's really easy. So the face-to-face is a bit more tricky because you don't want people travelling from one side of Auckland to the other. But yes, that's so, yeah. The thing is too about this, if I may say, at the moment we provide services, you know, locally in our local communities, and it's historically that's meant that our branch, our sites have been very focused on their own local communities. Nothing wrong with that. Wouldn't change that, because they know their people and they know what's available to them. What we're looking at is targeting those specific
maybe bring it a little bit closer. It might just be not picking you up. But, maybe just switch the right button and...
Don't you love technology when it
Oh,
works?
there you go. Oh, right.
This one.
As what we're aiming to do is still provide that core service, but also target those groups like the Rangitahi project. But to do that, we need to allocate funding to that, and rather than to allocate it to the well, obviously the branches needed operational costs, but we would like to use some of the funding to actually target those groups and provide services specifically for them. Maori, digitally disadvantaged, the elderly, the young. And we're not in the business of encroaching on anybody else's patch. We're the only organisation that operates the way we do. All we do is advice. We help people, enable people to resolve their issues. We don't actually provide concrete resources for them, if that can put it like that.
Kia ora, no, that's very clear. I've got now 2 more questions pop up. Councillor Bartley.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Apologies for lateness. I don't have a question. I just saw how you guys were frantically trying to get in front of all us councillors before the LTP because you were worried about whether you had support or not. And I just wanted to make a comment that you have support. You know, Aucklanders have been very clear to us that they value the services that you provide. So I hope you're not too worried because there are councillors that support what you do and see the value in what you do. And that's reflected out there in the public as well. So just a comment to say thank you so much for the work of our Citizens Advice Bureaus.
Well, thank you for that reassurance. It's excellent to hear. It's very... And we do thank you for your support.
There's some of us. Can't say that for all councillors or mayor.
Well, I have to say maybe, you know, we haven't been. I mean, it's difficult when you're volunteers. You've only got so much time, and that we haven't actually been very forward on the front foot in keeping you informed on what we do, and we're going to get much better at that. You will have got some information from us already this year, and we're going to work harder at that, so you know what we're doing.
No, thank you. And yeah, to Councillor Bartley's point, we were, a lot of us were very concerned with those proposed cuts at the beginning, but it made it so much easier when the public spoke up very clearly opposing that direction. So it gave us the information we needed to not support that direction. I should probably say that turn that in a positive way, but I didn't. And what you presented here, you know, one of the first questions in our briefing with staff was, you know, had we required this? So it was great to hear this has come from you. This is direction. You're taking the lead here from the community. So this is a fantastic way forward. Last question before we move on, Councillor Ferry.
Kia ora, thanks very much. I was wanting to understand a bit about how the Citizens Advice Bureau acts as kind of a little bit of a clearinghouse for some other services that people need. So, and I guess this is a slight conflict of interest. I'm a Justice of the Peace, and we do a clinic out of the CAB in the Mount Roskill Library. So there's the benefit of that co-location. I know they run a legal clinic out of CAB, so I wondered if you could maybe expand a little bit on how CAB is a trusted organisation with longevity in communities, often having a really cool physical presence, offers sort of some of that credibility to these other services and offers space and the value that that brings to local communities. I wondered if you wanted to talk about that.
I think that's your area.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, we operate in physical locations, and as you've pointed out, Councillor, you know, we do offer other clinics, we call them. They could be a JP clinic, they could be budgeting, they could be a range of things. So we see ourselves as operating like a mini community hub, and our managers are actually tasked with reaching out to the relevant groups and bringing them in to maximise the services that we can provide to the local people through those branches. So it's a very important part of our operation, and I think it's even mentioned in our strategy that we'd like to reach out even further and to continue and extend those connections. And we'll be looking at those sorts of things when we develop our operational plan over the next 2 to 3 months, which is going to flesh out and prioritise the projects that we wish to advance over the next 1, 2 and 3 years.
Just short supplementary, if that's okay. So part of that is offering effectively volunteer reception services to a lot of those groups. So I know, for example, when I sit there as a JP, it's someone from the CAB who actually triages people, work out do they actually need a JP or do they need something else.
Yeah.
You know, manages the queue, tells people when it's their turn, gets photocopying done, that kind of stuff. So is that something that's quite common across the bureaus, that you offer those kinds of reception services, which, you know, otherwise would be very difficult for those clinics
It does
to
depend on the actual branches. Some branches are larger and much busier than others. It's a small part of what we do as volunteers. You know, we offer that assistance just to help the whole system work more efficiently. But our primary focus is to deliver our own advice.
Yeah. Thanks very much.
Cool. Right, we will move on now. We spent quite a lot of time on that, but it's a very important subject. But we appreciate you coming and all the work done, and please give our regards to all the board members, staff and volunteers for the CABs, and we'll be definitely seeing you again soon, I'm sure. Cool. And Councillor Filipaina, did you want to move? Councillor Filipaina would like to move, and Councillor Turner would like to second. Thank you all. All those in favour? Aye. Any opposed? No, definitely not. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
And thank you very much, and you will have a good day too.
Sure.
Thank you.
Right. Cool, we're just checking the microphones. Cool, thank you. If there are any media or any other people filming, if we could just stay kind of on that side of the circle, and please don't film people's emails and their screens if possible. Thank you. Right, we have what many people are here waiting for, obviously, is Te Ohu Tāmaki, the Housing and Improving the Wellbeing of Aucklanders. Marlon, and I'm assuming you have a number of other people coming up as well. I only have one name on my list, so if you could introduce yourselves as you come to the desk to speak. Thank you. We won't have time to you all to individually introduce yourselves, but 4 will do. Kia ora, thank you. If you just, so it's a button on the right, and every time you stop talking, if you could just switch it off as well, and that allows other mics to be turned on and off.
Testing.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Welcome, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Tēnā koutou ki te kaunihera o Tāmaki Makaurau, ko Marlon Drake tōku ingoa. Kia ora, my name is Marlon Drake, lead organiser of Te Whakawhanaunga Tāmaki Makaurau, a civil society alliance of more than 40 faith organisations like the Anglican Diocese, the Salvation Army, unions like the Maritime Union, Air Tour Union, and community organisations like I Love Avondale and the Sisters of Mercy Whitty. We are joining hands to campaign for the well-being and the common good of whānau and tamariki in our city. And today is a chance for us to introduce ourselves to Auckland Council and briefly discuss an issue of extreme importance to our communities and every Aucklander.
Morena koutou katoa, ko Karen tōku ingoa. My name is Karen. My member organisation is Belong Aotearoa, and I'm a representative of Te Ohu Tāmaki. Auckland communities are made up of over 165 ethnic groups, has the largest Māori and Pacifica population, and houses a quarter of the European population. This is why Auckland communities need a seat at the table. Our communities need to have a voice into the decisions that impact their worlds, their lives and their whānau. Council must prioritise inclusivity and community engagement, intentionally seeking input from residents, community groups and stakeholders at every stage of the decision-making process. Today, We are here to change the way democracy and politics are done in our city. Kia ora.
Ora.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Margaret Martin tōku ingoa, from Sisters of Mercy Wiri, a member organisation of Te Uhu. Since the founding event of Te Uhu Tamaki, the Te Uhu Alliance began a campaign to ensure that everybody in Auckland and Aotearoa has the right to a decent home. We come before you this morning to make clear our intent to call on Auckland Council, through you, our elected representatives, to join with us to realise this kaupapa. On Easter Sunday, I visited a family of 8, mum and dad and 6 children living in emergency housing. They are crammed into a 1-bedroom space, or 1-room space, of which the entire floor is taken over with a set of bunks and mattresses. Cooking facilities are downstairs in a communal kitchen area. They had been living there since August 2023. Can you imagine living like this? The eldest child, a girl of 12, is disabled. In spite of her shortened arms and legs, she manages incredibly well. Mid-April, the family were transferred to transitional housing, a 2-bedroom, 2-storey unit with a small kitchen, lounge and bathroom. An improvement, of course, from the emergency accommodation, but still very inadequate housing for the family. How long they will be there, who knows? This situation is replicated for thousands of tamariki and whānau throughout our city. People have no place to call home, and for many the hope of being housed in a healthy, affordable, stable and secure dwelling is unlikely any time soon. We believe that Council has a significant and important role to play in solving the housing crisis in our city. Of course, Council cannot do this alone. No one entity can. It will take a collective and concerted effort. At Te Uhu's founding event, in the presence of over 600 community leaders and representatives, the now Minister of Finance, Nicola Willis, committed to building 1,000 state-owned houses a year in our city. We have that commitment. We call on Auckland Council to engage with the Alliance, with Aucklanders. We have power and influence, and we will use this to work collaboratively for long-term transformative solutions to the chronic housing shortage in our city. Let us work together to fulfil every Aucklander's right to a decent home.
Mahalo lele, councillors. My name is Talavao Ngata. I'm here on behalf of Community Housing Aotearoa. Our organisation is also a proud member of Te Uhu Tamaki. CHA is a peak body for the community housing sector, and we believe that affordable, healthy homes are at the heart of strong communities. We support all Aucklanders being well housed across the housing continuum. Our Te Uhu submission on the long-term plan is built on, as you have heard, local community stories, and our mayoral housing asks are rights-based and backed up by evidence. Our research tells us that even if house prices remain the same while incomes rose, Auckland would only become affordable by 2042. That's 20 years from now. We believe that Auckland Council should be enabled to require good planning and delivery of affordable homes to meet local needs. Thank you for meeting with us today. We're happy to take any questions.
Kia ora, thank you so much, and thank you to all the groups and organisations here represented. It's fantastic to see, and I know there's many of those that cannot make it who are also standing on your shoulders, so thank you. We have a number of questions so far. Councillor Henderson first up.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, look, just thank you so much as well for coming. It's a reminder for us of the housing crisis that affects so many Aucklanders, and our role as leaders to fight that housing crisis and actually enable the human right of people to have a warm, dry home. So thank you so much. Look, I do have a question, Chair. If you could do one thing to fix the housing crisis, what would it be?
Thank you for your question. I think I'll pass them to Marlon.
Yeah, kia ora. Housing is just way too important to be a political football, and we need a non-partisan plan. For too long, every time the government changes, the whole entire housing system changes. If we really are serious about solving the housing crisis and fulfilling the right for that every New Zealander has to a decent home, then we need civil society, that's us, to work with the private sector, and then come to government and make a long-term, multi-decade plan so we know exactly how many public houses to build, exactly how many community houses to build, how much market housing, and to stick to that plan. And that's the only thing that's really going to solve the housing crisis for Tāmaki Makaurau.
Ngā mihi, thank you so much.
Thank you. Deputy Chair, Councillor Dalton.
Kia ora, thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa, and thank you for your presentation today and for everyone for coming today. Thank you for the meeting last week, Margaret and Anne and Talava, and also Salvation Army. I have some responses for you that the Chair and I have been working on with the Executive Officer of Chief Planning and the Principal Advisor to the Mayor. So we'll get back to you on that. My question, though, Marlon, it might be early days yet and you might not be able to answer it, but I am interested in the impacts that the recent announcements from the Minister of Housing has made around kāinga ora, around removing the First Start contribution to buying a home. What impacts, just maybe off the top of your head at the moment, and secondly, the dreadful treatment there is of Housing New Zealand kāinga ora tenants and the impacts of just being able to be moved on without any reason now. Any initial thoughts around that? Thank you.
Totally. Thank you, Councillor Dalton. What I would say is this. When the Finance Minister, Nicola Willis, made her commitment to Te Au Whakawhanaunga, she made it to every single Aucklander that she would be building 1,000 new public houses every single year in Auckland for this term. Every single Aucklander holds that commitment, and we're looking forward to Budget Day and seeing the government stick to that commitment too. Regarding tenants being moved on, what I would say is this. What we know is that if you want to solve the housing crisis, you need to give people two things: support services and a stable and decent home. And if moving people around may be a risk to that right, and may certainly be a risk to people's right to security of tenure in their home. And what may likely happen from that is people ending up on the streets in our own communities that we see every day already. So Aucklanders, I hope, should take that into account.
If I could just follow up with one question, thank you for that. I just wanted to ask a question around your response to Councillor Henderson around housing, around the political football that it becomes. The same has been said of transport projects, and we never get anywhere. We get held back or flipped around. So I'm wondering if that conversation has been held at any level around a separate entity, and I believe it has at some point in time, that can just continue with the infrastructure that this country needs for housing and transport outside of the political environment.
One of the 7 principles of the right to a decent home is access to services and infrastructure. And so we would support anything that helps to fulfil that right. And I do believe that public transport is one excellent example of that. And so we'd be pleased to meet with yourself and any other councillor on our transport discussions in the future as they come.
I'd like that. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you, Deputy Chair. Councillor Darby.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you to you all. You raised 2 questions. The first was actually around what I would term the participatory democracy as opposed to the representative democracy. This is the representative democracy, and then we make space for participation. That is not the participatory democracy by making a little bit of space. How does your organisation see this entity of Auckland Council going forward? How do you see it moving from the representative model to a real participatory model? That's my first question, and I'll come back to housing.
Well, next time we'd like to be able to bring the banners inside. That would be lovely. What I would say, the most important thing that any city councillor or city council senior officer, so I'm glad to see senior management here, is to meet with us. When we send you a letter representing over 40 organisations and tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Aucklanders, asking for a cordial meeting and negotiation on policy in this city, we would like to meet with you. Kia ora.
That's pretty fundamental. Thank you. And the second question is around housing, housing affordability, homelessness. We've seen record numbers of houses being built in Auckland until more recently with, a downturn, interest rates biting and construction, etc. But we have seen record numbers. For probably about 3 years, we saw record numbers. And look, there's success there for all of us. But homelessness and affordability kept racing away. So how do you see the problem? We have focused, both government and ourselves have focused on quantity generally, but untargeted. And I'd like your comment on how do we need to refocus to draw the energy and the thinking to addressing affordability rather than just building more and more, assuming affordability follows. And we know from all around the world, affordability does not necessarily follow quantity.
Thank you for that question. If you look at our submission, we did talk at length about inclusionary housing and sort of the impact it could have at the local government level. In short, inclusionary housing is a planning tool commonly used overseas that requires or provides incentives for developers to incorporate affordable housing. So in short, it essentially means that more people will have a shot at being able to flourish in a secure, healthy home because that affordability is required legally through planning tools. Now, as with most planning tools, the devil is in the detail. So I can refer you to more research that we've done at Community Housing Aotearoa or workshop with this committee on how it could be implemented at the council level. But as we stated in our submission, we do believe that it is time that Auckland Council more seriously consider its role in implementing inclusionary housing, and we'd like to continue working with you as an alliance on that. Yeah.
And I'll just add to that, there is significant research showing that a market-driven model without measures for affordability is a failure.
Yeah, and one last one. For the Chief of Strategy, and Chief of Strategy, you probably know this question is coming. When we've considered the Forward Work Programme previously, I've said, where is our attention to affordable housing and homelessness? And I look at the Forward Work Programme on the agenda today, and it's not evident. So it's one thing for me to, as a councillor, to say nice things to you and go, yay, 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 but the truth is it's not on our agenda. It's not. So our formal work programme has a massive gap in housing. We're addressing unitary plan responses. So my question is, I asked this about 18 months ago, and I know we've had some challenges, but when is this committee going to formally identify affordable housing and homelessness as a responsibility for its attention? It's not there now. And this group is coming, assuming that we are abreast of that, and we're not.
Kia ora, through the chair. Thanks for the question. Look, you're right. There isn't anything specifically on the work programme coming to this committee. That doesn't mean that there's nothing happening, say, around homelessness in particular. And we know that there's a number of work that we do with other agencies in particular on homelessness. Affordable housing, we have advised as well that we certainly play a role, but we don't have the biggest levers in the system around affordable housing. But I think that's why working with the chair, you can see the proposed recommendation up there. And what I'm expecting is from a report back that this committee may in fact choose to do some more work or to set some different kinds of policies in these areas.
And look, I appreciate that, but it should not take this group to trigger this council to wake up to that resolution there. It should have been there. I asked for it a long time ago, and I guess it was part of the work that the former committee was working on. We had the housing task force. We've got a range of work streams that were underway, and we did have problems, but we need to get that up and get it live, because the number of people that are homeless out there is just enormous now. It's enormous. And I read an article in The Guardian that per capita, we're one of the highest in the world now in Aotearoa. And so it must be high in Auckland. It's not my turn to comment here, but
This is not a question. And Councillor Darby, we have given you feedback a number of times on that, and also the Councillor Bartley is leading some of that work. We also, through your committee last term, lost inclusionary zoning a number of times, and I don't believe this term we would get it over the line, but we can try again. And all the work program is still continuing, which we have given you feedback on. But the advocacy points to government, and maybe I've got questions after the 4 that are there around my concerns around the government changes on where we had been going, which was fantastic direction on social housing and affordable housing. Councillor Ferry.
Thanks. Councillor Darby stole my main question, but I do have another one, so that's good. So one of the things I'm interested in is how, and this might be a sort of future discussion, but how Auckland compares to some other local governments around New Zealand in terms of direct provision of social housing. So it's something that we haven't added a lot in that space since Auckland Council started. There's the Haumaru program, but it doesn't really seem to be much of a focus on expanding housing stock in line with population growth. Is that something that you'd have any thoughts on at this point? Whether council has a role in that sort of direct provision of housing alongside other community housing providers?
Only to comment that the Queenstown's Lakes District have improved their housing supply by including inclusionary zoning in that area. So there are councils that are looking at ways that they can provide a range of housing options to accommodate people in that space.
Right. I think that would be something I'd be really interested in a further conversation about other councils we could look to. Sorry, they're quite temperamental. It's got to do with the heat in the room, I understand.
I'll just add that within Aotearoa, New Zealand, other councils financially support at arm's length their housing providers. So with lower cost finance, direct capital contributions, inclusionary housing contributions, and access to council land. So we're ready as an alliance to sort of work with you on exploring those opportunities.
Right. As a first step, you might want to see if there are any particular local boards who would be interested in some projects in that space. It would likely be their land in the first instance, and that might be a good starting point. Anyway, sorry, that wasn't a question.
I would like to encourage council, as it's been triggered, that housing and the supply of that does come onto the work plan, because we need to have a seat at the table in order for us to work together to address some of these issues that have been raised. And as with regard to affordable and rental housing, we do not have the supply. We have over 25,000 on the housing register that are looking for housing. So the situation is there that we need to address. It's how we do that and how we can do it collectively together to address that housing need.
Good, thank you. Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thanks. And first of all, congratulations for everyone who's turned up today. This is by far and away the largest delegation that's been before this council this term. So thank you, everyone. And it's also very apt timing if you're following Parliament the last week or so. This battle's raging on between what the last government was doing in terms of Kaingora state housing and this new notion of community providers somehow filling the gap and doing better. So I take what you're asking from us in the first instance is just engagement, just talking, which seems reasonable enough. My question, though, to you, and you seem to have a more of an insight into some of the research or how things could be done differently. This hasn't just happened within the last few years. This has been over 2 decades now. So my question is, in your talk to us, because you know, we haven't exactly been the shining light of solutions either. Do you see solutions here or overseas examples, like places like Chile perhaps, where countries have dealt with similar challenges and have dealt with them relatively expeditiously with that cooperation of government, social providers and councils?
Okay. So a couple of questions there. I'll let Dalaval speak to specific solutions that we've seen working internationally. I know that the adoption of the right to a decent home in Toronto has led to a successful establishment of a program, still early days, where they have a staff member and I believe team, a commissioner, dedicated to reviewing all council policy and its relation to the right and the decency principles beneath it. So as a start, having some inbuilt institutional support for making sure that the right to a decent home is being supported in Auckland is a good thing. If you want to go to sort of the further end of the spectrum about what's been done to totally solve homelessness and the housing crisis, then you need to look no further than Vienna in Austria, where they introduced the right to a decent home a little over 100 years ago, embarked on an intensive social housing provision program, utilising both direct public housing and then also community housing providers, and still do to this day. I mean, they even have union-owned housing there. Imagine if the Maritime Union could own some housing right by the port. And that's been an incredibly successful program. And even though there are still market rents and things spiraling out of control over there every now and again, you do not see the homelessness and desperation that you see in countries like ours where we've chosen the market model. So that's the sort of the further end and the best example that we've seen internationally of a successful housing system.
I'll just say there's a lot of examples where it works well at the local government level, but there's still a lot of work to do in the context of Aotearoa to sort of figure what that out is. But we can provide more research on sort of on that, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Philippine.
Tēnā koe he mana. Thank you, Chair. Look, everybody's acknowledged the presence. My question is going to be based around your thoughts as to what Auckland Council should do when they engage with the community. Now, you mentioned that the group that you have with you is Salvation Army, some of the other organisations. Are you saying to Auckland Council, we are the group that you need to engage with and not the others individually?
That's a good question. Certainly not. What I would say is we are definitely your first port of call when it comes to anything civil society or community voice in Tāmaki Makaurau. So if there is a major issue or a major decision that is upcoming, I believe my contact is with the staff, then get in touch, and we have member organisations and members and leaders, community leaders from the top of the North Shore all the way down to the bottom of Tāmaki Makaurau, from the east to the west. So please do and know and have the knowledge that you can prioritise having a conversation with us, and we can put you in touch with the right people or give an alliance-wide response. But certainly would also say that there are other technical things that could be done to better improve consultation with the community. It is a difficult process to engage with, and we see that reflected in the statistics of engagement and the disproportionate representation within submissions to consultation processes.
Chair, the reason I mentioned that is in September of last year, Lotu and I ended up going to the Salvation Army and talking about the issues that have now been put in front of us. With that, Kataraina Maki is the person that I contacted, obviously with her as the General Manager, and also Ben Brooks. So I think that's the reason why I ask, is because there are some issues that we're dealing with Salvation Army at Manuka, with Ronji. who I believe is now left. I don't know whether he's still here, but I believe he's left. So that's the reason for that. I'm going to contact Kataraina because I need to get and close the loop on that discussion, which had everything on the table which you have brought to us. Can I just say one more thing, Chair? And Margaret, you mentioned the word triggered, and with your answer to Councillor Watson's pātai. And I'm glad you were here, the whole collective, because it's triggered now some of the councillors around here to now say, what the hell are we going to do? How are we going to get everybody together? So congratulations on that, because that's what you've done, is triggered everybody else now to say, look, we need to get them on board. We need to do a lot more work, knowing that the government is also a big player in this. So ngā mihi kia koutou katoa. Kia ora. Thank you, Herman.
Kia ora. Councillor Leone, online.
Sorry, my background is a little bit distorted there. Kia ora everyone in Aroha Mai. I'm sick at the moment, so I'm not able to be there in person. And I know that you've already pretty much answered this question, but I just wanted to say, is there anything in addition to what you've already mentioned about how you as Te Ohu see council's role in housing? Because you've already mentioned quite a lot. I know that you've answered that extensively, and I know from my own experience as well, living overseas, that there's so many other councils in Europe, for example, that have a lot more power to be making decisions in this space. I know also the FO today, there's a hui on homelessness. So it's a huge topic that I'm also passionate about, and I tautoko what's been said previously around us prioritising this. So just any final comments on that in terms of what you see the council's role regarding housing?
Well, I would just thank you, Councillor Leone. What I would just say, so all the things we've listed and more, but I would just say two things. First of all, we met with a range of experts and council staff, including the homelessness lead, Ron Suka. We've met with a range of community providers and community leaders and so forth. And looking at the evidence and looking at the levers that council has and could have, there is a view that if council wanted to, it could solve homelessness tomorrow. It is possible. And so that is the broad approach with which that we're taking here. Second of all, the immediate thing that would be good to see, the immediate next step just to get us started, is Auckland Council adopting the right to a decent home.
Kia ora, thank you. Councillor Newman, and then I've got Councillor.
Good morning and thank you. Councillor Darby has really hit the nail on the head with his inquiry this morning, because we can give the speeches, but in fact the work program doesn't exist in the space. I'm trying to ascertain what the immediate priority should be. Is it affordable homes to rent? Is it affordable homes to buy? If it's affordable homes to buy, is that through inclusionary zoning? Because inclusionary zoning, the potential there is that the first person will take the benefit of that will be the developer, or is it trying to look at surplus council land which we can then make available to a community housing provider to go and build on the basis that it's going to be a shared equity arrangement? I don't know what the first priority is, and I would be very keen to understand that, because I have not observed a work program that is actually delivering in this. I mean, Barrowcliff was a good example of a development that actually got some affordable housing, but they're rare as hen's teeth. But what is that first priority beyond a declaration about what this council believes? And there has to be a first policy intervention that you say this is the number one cab off that rank. I'm not sure I agree with it, but there has to be something that goes first. What is it?
That's a really good question. Thank you, Councillor Newman. It's a very difficult question to answer at a council table. What I would say is this: inclusionary housing and the financial support that can give, and the direct implementation of social housing and affordable housing that can provide, will enable council to make decisions on those other things. inclusionary housing and having, for example, a portion of profits from a major housing development near a CRL station, and I know that process of zoning is taking place, will give council a bit of a test run at inclusionary housing, see how it operates, see how it works, and also bring in some income, whether it be financial income or capital injection to council to be able to make some of those other decisions, which are all good ideas, by the way. Providing council land for social housing is an excellent idea, and inclusionary housing is a good step that you can start off with.
Can I just ask one follow-up, Chair, if I may? Because, okay, I certainly wouldn't want to be giving a concession to Kāinga Ora because that's the Crown, and I don't want to preference the Crown as receiving the first benefit, because quite frankly, they'll be the last organisation I want to benefit right now. But with respect to, okay, so if it's a community housing provider, presumably that would have to, the benefit would have to go to them, but it would have to go to them on the basis of a set of contracted conditions over and above the resource consent for that type of intervention, so as to ensure that the housing is actually delivered at a price point that is going to benefit whoever wants to purchase it, or is it to be held by the community housing provider for rentals? I mean, where is that point? Is it for social housing for rent, or is it for the first home buyer to buy at a discount?
It's not allowed at all.
Yeah. It's the whole spectrum is the bad news. It's all those things that need to be done. But I would really welcome a meeting with you, Councillor Newman, to talk through that. It does sound like you have some ideas on this and what we can put into the work plan. So I think we would appreciate that. And I believe Sister Margaret is in your ward. So it'd be great to arrange that. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you. Last question, Councillor Turner.
Thank you. I wasn't going to say anything, but I was triggered during the debate. I'm very disappointed with policy and more policy. I like to see actions. I was at Vision West in West Auckland. I have been over the last couple of years. They got tiny houses there they can't place because they can't get past our planning consents on properties. Would you agree that one of the things we could do first is act? Is the important issue, and that's something we can act on.
Yes, and yes.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Councillor Bartley now.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for coming and speaking to something that is part of some of our daily lives. We deal with housing issues on the daily. It's good because you highlight something that not a lot of councillors have that exposure to. Or understand the severity of. We have looked at affordable inclusionary zoning before. Phil Reid did a lot of work in the planning department at council. And there were it really came down to government advocacy from our side. But your presentation, I think, has sparked off a lot of people. So it's good that we can perhaps look at that again. Duncan McLennan, Ron Suka, their team, my committee is the one that's picked up homelessness, and they've done a lot of work in that space with Housing First and Kaui Te Kaha and other organisations, Kickback Front Door. So just accepting your offer to work together, to be at the table. My own question is really around affordable rentals. Do you see that as the priority? Because you've got Kāinga Ora there with the public housing, our social housing, but what people, and then you've got transitional housing, which I also wanted to know, do you think that that's actually not the solution? Because a lot of people who are homeless that come to me say, I don't want to go into a transitional home. I don't want to go into those hotels. I want a permanent home. So just your thoughts on that, please.
Yes, we do need permanent housing for people, and there is a chronic shortage of rental accommodation. And I think as a country, we have a responsibility for the government to provide rental accommodation for people on low incomes and that have no place to call home. And this is what we need to work together on to achieve. And we need to do this collaboratively and across bipartisan agreements so that we can come to some understanding that our people on low incomes are housed by the state and looked after.
Kia ora. I keep saying it's the last question, but if we have two more, we will need to move on pretty soon. Member Ashby.
Thank you for indulging me. Kia ora koutou. Thank you very much for the presentation. Just a quick one from me. I've just been looking through your website. Obviously, housing in terms of affordability, whether it be purchase, also conditions for rentals or availability, they affect all our communities, but some a little more so than others, and so the Māori community in particular is disproportionately impacted across whatever housing category you're looking at. Do you have a policy or a statement or a position on that currently, and or are you interested in bringing that into the conversation to come? Kia ora.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Member Ashby. What I would say is yes, definitely. And one of the things we talk about in our long-term submission is how we can better support Māori housing providers. And you look at the work that Kahu Tukaha has been doing around the corner from here, I think. It's incredible. It's fantastic. And we look at more ways that we can support them. And I was heartened to see the continuation of fast-track consenting for Māori housing providers in that submission. And I would also really strongly welcome a conversation with you as a member after this meeting to better understand other ways that you may see that we can support Māori housing initiatives, because they are needed and that community absolutely needs it too. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Councillor Walker, he must be online. Councillor Walker, if you're speaking, we can...
Yes, hi. Yeah, sorry about that. So I've got a question just further to an earlier question around tiny homes or portable homes. The information I've received from various people is that could be quite a fast fix in a number of locations. But as somebody mentioned earlier, I think it was Councillor Turner, there are major impediments in planning. In a situation where it is a very realistic and affordable proposition, do you think that council should set up some form of work stream around expediting what we can do in that area that might be more similar to the situation that exists in other countries, where it is an affordable, a realistic and a relatively fast way to find some accommodation, and the planning rules allow it?
Awesome. Thank you for your question, Councillor Walker. I would say one of the big things that we've been talking about is how we can better support the provision of any kind of social housing. So, and certainly looking at the success of fast-track consenting for Māori housing, it would be interesting to have a work group focusing on how we can expedite not only that option, but all the other options which Te Ohu is putting on the table. So would be very keen to meet with you and talk about that. Thank you.
So just further to that, through you, Mr. Chair, if we were interested in putting some sort of working group together, would you be in a position to put up a proposition to us to make it happen and engage with the officers so that from their side they could make it happen?
Short answer, yes, definitely. Slightly longer answer, the second ask that we have in our long-term submission is the setting up of a coordination group to look at how we can solve the housing crisis and address housing issues in Aotearoa, sorry, in Tamaki Makaurau, start local. And so I think as part of that, that's an excellent idea, and we'd be happy to work with whichever staff member or council we need to do to provide that proposal.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, presenters.
Thank you, Councillor. And we have been in touch previously with MB. Largely the tiny house issue is with the Building Act, not council related, and we can continue those conversations next time we speak with Minister Bishop and Minister Pink and others around how we can streamline that process, because largely it's able to happen, but often the building consent can be a barrier to allowing it to happen easily. I have a question then before I just briefly speak, just on the 1,000 homes a year that Finance Minister Willis has promised. That would be, and that's just off the top of my head, so I may not be correct, well below, I think, what we have been seeing in the kind of order space in Auckland in recent years. So are we Are you aware of that? 1,000 seems low.
Yes, it is well below that. That was 3,000 they were building. Now we're committed to 1,000. So there is not enough housing being built in that space, and it's less than what was provided earlier.
Yeah, I couldn't find the yearly figures, but on my monthly figures of the Kāinga Ora space, it's far, yeah. So thank you, the 3,000.
Well, just to clarify, that number was based on the previous government's annual increase of public housing, so it's a little over by about, I think, 150 over the around 800 or so a year that were being built by Kāinga Ora and Tāmaki Makaurau. Regarding that ask, it'd be excellent for any planning that's being done between council, and it's great to have you here, Mayor Brown. Thank you for being here, to have that conversation and know that when you go into negotiations with the government that they have made this commitment to all of us as Aucklanders.
Kia ora, thank you. So just a few comments from me, and once again, thank you very much. And just on that comment, I guess it would be good to see this group. Obviously, you have spoken to some ministers, but this push again, because a lot of those tools or the keys to success are through government, and we're happy to support again. Last term, through Plan Change 78, which we are going to be revisiting through hazards next year, it was decided not to progress with any affordable housing or inclusionary zoning, and that was, some of us voted in favour of that, and some that got voted down twice last term. So we can't change the unitary plan until the government changes the law to allow us to change the unitary plan or the Plan Change 78 that we're currently in. So I'm happy to put that discussion up again, although I would say my vibe is that would be less likely to get across the line this term, as it lost twice last term. Also, with some of us push forward to increase the number of houses on council land, including older persons' homes, that lost as well. Once again, happy to look into that again. But most of the work that, again, thank you, Mayor Brown, for reversing those changes in last year's budget. There was going to be a reduction in that homelessness spend. As Councillor Bartley says, that now sits not with the Planning Committee, but with Councillor Bartley's committee, and she's doing a fantastic work in that space. But it doesn't mean that the responsibility isn't all of ours, because it 100% is. But Ron and the team, I've met a number of times with him. They're doing some fantastic work, but no doubt we need to ramp up that work as well. So there is a lot of work going on in the public Kāinga space as well, Māori housing. We need to be more enabling of this work. We obviously work alongside Eke Pānuku where we can with Kāinga Ora, so we've got some great developments coming, working alongside Kāinga Ora. Cross fingers that those stick with the change in government. I'm sure they will. But those opportunities we need to keep bringing forward if we're going to keep losing votes on inclusionary zoning and those sorts of tools. So thank you for all the information. We are going to have a report back on both your requests, if we can, what it looks like if council pledges to the right to a decent home. Obviously, that's fantastic if we do that, but I want it to be more than words. We have had a lot of our plans are just advocacy to government, and it needs to be broader than that. And then we can report back on your other requests as well, and just generally give a refresh of what council is doing in the space, because there's quite a broad amount. But also meeting with ministers, which we often do, making sure we are highlighting that very loudly. So thank you all. It's not obviously magical answers today, as always, but as many of you have been in this space advocating for communities for years, you know that every time you come and speak to any of us, government, media, it makes a difference. Those voices constantly out there every time a change of legislation happens or something goes backwards, or when good things happen, you're there to celebrate it too. So kia ora to all the advocacy and work that you do well outside normal working hours. Your lives are dedicated to this work. So myself and Councillor Dalton will move a vote of thanks, and also requesting that, and to highlight the fact that through public input, we can only ask for a request of a report back. We can't ask for other decisions to be made or debated here. So I will move, and Councillor Dalton has second. And all those in favour? Aye. Any opposed? Wouldn't have thought so. Thank you so much for being here, and no doubt we'll see you again soon. Kia ora.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, now we have our local board input. We have the Waitakere Ranges Local Board to discuss and talk about the formation of the Waitakere Ranges Heritage Area Forum, which sounds fairly exciting. Thank you, Greg and Mark. We won't start the clock until the room's cleared and you've got some time. If you just want to switch off that microphone next to you, Greg, that'd be great. Oh, or on, thank you. Kia ora, local board members and member Ed Ashby. Chairperson, if you just would like to introduce yourselves, and then you can all introduce yourselves if you'd like, and then you have around 5 minutes, but obviously as you've seen today that we haven't been playing exactly by those rules, so I'm sure there'll be questions as well. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to present. I'm Greg Preston, I'm the Chair of the Waitakere Ranges Local Board. With me is Sandra Coney and Mark Allen, and our brother Edwin Ashby, who's also a proud Westie. So the request is for Council in the Planning Committee to think about the formation of a forum to discuss heritage area issues. First of all, by way of background, it's a subject that I've discussed many times at different council meetings. The Waitakere Ranges are the dominant physical feature of our local board area. From the stunning beaches of the west coast to the eastern rolling foothills, they provide a dramatic backdrop to the city. They give natural habitat, fresh water, artistic inspiration and places to live, and they make our place special. The Waitakere Ranges Heritage Area Act recognises the national significance of the area. It provides for enhanced protection for the area by formulating objectives that need to be considered every time a change to the unitary plan is considered, or if a non-complying or discretionary resource consent application is made. And as shown by successive 5-yearly reports and by recent staff advice, the Act performs its protective job reasonably well. Subdivisions are limited, and the area is not currently suffering death by 1,000 cuts, which was foretold many years ago if the legislation wasn't passed. But it's important to continue to rethinking the application of the Act, and new threats such as curry dieback and weeds and slips are emerging, and we need to be ever vigilant for new threats. The reasons for the forum. In 2020, the Environmental Defence Society published a review of the working of the Heritage Area Act, and the report said, and this is a quote, "Consideration needs to be given to ways in which the heritage area could be kept alive. This could be achieved through the establishment of an independent body with dedicated funding to manage the heritage area on behalf of the public. It could either be a separate entity, such as a Waitakere Ranges Heritage Area Implementation and Oversight Body, or the Waitakere Ranges Local Board could be tasked and resourced to provide the specific function. The entity would be charged with managing the area in line with the objectives of the heritage area while creating a stronger pathway to implementation. The entity would be responsible for overseeing the implementation of the local area plans and continuing the state of the Waitakere Ranges Heritage Area monitoring." And as a local board, we believe there's merit in the idea of the forum. We want to work closely with the governing body in developing this idea. Mana Whenua's involvement is vital, and community should also be involved in delivering on the aims for the heritage area. And we believe that the involvement of the Karawamaki is especially important. Just a quick comment on the significant challenges facing the area. It's still recovering from the battering it took from the 2 storms last year. Kauri dieback remains a slow but insidious threat to the health of all local Kauri. Weeds and pests continue to threaten. Titirangi especially has a significant weeds problem, and the area is a huge draw card for visitors. The place has the danger of being loved to death. That's a photograph of one of the major slips. This one is from Piha, and it's going to take years to fix. In terms of opportunities, Section 29 of the Heritage Area Act requires there to be a deed of acknowledgement between local iwi, including Te Karoamaki and Ngāti Whātua and Council. The purpose of the deed is to acknowledge the particular historical, traditional, cultural or spiritual relationship of tangata whenua to the heritage area with any land in the heritage area, and parties would include Crown, Council and local iwi. The deed must identify specific opportunities for contribution by tangata whenua to the management of the land owned by the Crown or by Council. The Act is now 16 years old, and to date there's been no sign of a deed appearing, although I understand the work is now happening in the background, and I believe it is time for the deed to be advanced. I believe it's time for how the Act is working to be considered and reviewed. And one option to consider the varied topics such as the deed, reviewing, enhancing the effects of the Act, could be the creation of the forum anticipated by the EDS report. There should be places available for local representatives of our villages and of the environmental sector in any such entity. And the business of the forum could be to consider issues relating to the implementation of actions considered by the Heritage Area Act, and management of issues concerning the Act, and decisions could then be considered by the Council or by the local board for ratification and implementation. There is a model. The Hauraki Golf Forum performs a not dissimilar sort of role as that is anticipated. That relies on statutory provisions for its creation, but there's no such provision in the Waitaki Ranges Heritage Area Act, but there is power for Council or the local board, for that matter, to set up such an entity. Those are my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the efforts of all four of you and many others in leadership roles who have protected the ranges and do a phenomenal amount of work for this taonga. My first just brief comments before I go to questions are that I think we would no doubt support the local board setting this up if they felt that that was appropriate. I think it would be because you already have mana whenua support, which on other forums that's not always the case. And the Hauraki Golf Forum obviously is slightly different because it's set in legislation, much like the kaipara. The other thing was the deed of acknowledgement, and thank you to the leadership of this committee. We are, I think, getting it back coming to us in June or July for further discussion. So I think this will be a nice kind of timing-wise to connect that up. So thank you for, obviously, Member Ashby for really making quite a lot of good push on that to finally get there after such a long time of kind of not moving forward on that. So I think there's a lot of work from staff that are going on in the background, but we will make sure that you are equally connected to that conversation when we know those dates. We'll go to questions. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions, and I'd be delighted to move this if possible, Chair. Firstly, I suppose it leads on from your kind of kōrero, Chair. Do you need anything from us as a regional body to set it up?
Thanks, Councillor Henderson. We've always talked about should we do it or should Council do it. The one advantage of Council doing it is considerably more resources that you have. And so from that point of view, we think there's a logic for you to consider that role, although we would certainly be very happy participants in it. But otherwise, we're happy to set it up, but the resources are I think the most important issue for us to work out.
Okay, maybe we might need a yarn sort of off meeting to try and work out through those details, but I think it's a really great thing. Secondly, and you've kind of predicted my second question, what's your take on the level of funding provided for environment and conservation work in the Waitakere Ranges?
Not enough. We pour a fair bit of our LDI into areas such as weeds control, and we do that because we do want to preserve and enhance the Act. But my view is the Act creates a requirement for council whenever it makes any decisions, including funding decisions, to think about the operation of the Act and its objectives, and to reach those objectives, the funding needs to be adequate, and it's not right now. We're going backwards. So we think that again, we're getting back to the money question, but that the resources are all important in terms of what we can do to preserve and enhance the area.
Thank you so much for your work. Thanks, Chair.
Good, Councillor, thank you. And now we go to the other part of the Waitakares, Councillor Turner.
No, it's not the other part, Mr. Chair. I was on this board, so it's my part of the Waitakares, and it's one of the reasons I was on this board. Good morning, Cameron, comrades. And Ed, thank you very much. I see and hear that you have complained about lack of engagement from staff. I have put out pages and pages of questions, etc. on this, and thank you very much, Ed. Te Kaurau Maki is the only people who have engaged with me at any length. But is this co-governance? Because you have just said that in this, and the only proposal I've seen so far, other than the deed of acknowledgement content in the Act, is a Heart of the Ngāhere proposal from Te Kaurau Maki. And you have said here in this delivery that you're talking about sharing that activity between the board and Te Kaurau. So that's my first question. Do you see this as a co-governance?
Thanks for the question. I don't have any personal reservations about the concept of co-governance.
I didn't ask if you had reservations. I asked if you saw it as that.
The deed itself is council land and there's Crown land, and the deed recognises that locally we should have a significant say in the management of that land. It's logical for the forum to consider heritage area issues completely, and Te Kaurau Maki and Ngāti Whātua have a significant interest in making sure they're involved in those discussions. And perhaps Social Leader would comment as well.
Yeah.
Would comment.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, I'm not a member of the local board. I'm here, and I'm in this 5 minutes. I'm representing Te Kaurau Maki, not the IMSB, but I think taking models like the Tupuna Maunga or the Hauraki Golf Forum was the kind of general idea, and I think it comes down to three things. One is this is supposed to be nationally significant by legislation, yet it's in my opinion, forgotten poor cousin of the Hauraki Golf. It's supposed to be managed in an integrated way, which it isn't. It's managed in a siloed way, in my opinion. And it's supposed to be enhanced as well as protected, and so some things have been, but not all things, and that includes community things as well. And so I can't speak to co-governance for that side. For us, it's probably more like a co-management type of thing. That's the Act talks about iwi tangata whenua contribution to decision-making of the management of the public land, and then the overall implementation of the Act. So that's kind of the language in the Act. But there are models out there that I think you could look to emulate.
Thank you. Just two more questions. So leading on from that, you acknowledge that the Act covers 27,000 hectares, of which 10,700 is private land, and implicit through the Act is the fact that there's two distinct separations there. So how do you see a machinery like you're suggesting working across the private land?
So I live in Te Rangi, which is part of the heritage area.
Me too.
And I'm perfectly, to deal with environmental issues, you can't just stick to the publicly owned land and stop there. To deal with environmental issues, you've got to go throughout the whole area. Weeds don't respect boundaries. So
how do you see? I'll leave that. My last question, please, Sandra. I did give you some pictures, if you would.
Just while those are coming up, if I could also add, we're fully aware we have one of the most dense groups of residents and ratepayer groups in Tāmaki Makaurau. I would suggest that a forum provides probably one of the greatest opportunities for participation of community in these conversations on behalf of the private residents. So I think that any forum that we have is actually creating an opportunity for participation rather than a more centralised conversation going on.
Do you not see the combined R&R of the Waitakeris, which represents 17 R&Rs, I understand, as being able to achieve that?
No, because its scope is far wider than what we're looking at here. What we're looking at here is something that actually brings a wide range of diverse voices. That's one forum, and it's a great forum. It's really good. But it's not the same as one based around the Waitaka Ranges Heritage Area and the focus of the legislation there.
Okay, so my last question is, and I'll only pose it if we can get the photos up. Can I just scroll through the four of them, please? Is this what your collective there thinks is natural, and how we will manage our native forests and our heritage area if we accept what you're proposing here? Thank you.
I'll invite Sandra to comment on that.
I think you're leaping too far ahead, Ken. We haven't talked about, we wanted to come here first to talk about this. We haven't really talked about whether it's governance or management. We haven't talked about who the people would be that were represented. And I'm really clear that our communities who absolutely supported the Act, otherwise it wouldn't have happened, are part of that. So there needs to be a lot of talk, but that would be on my personal agenda, Ken, that we could get some more flexibility in the rules that government has for upgrading tracks so that they're safe and won't spread carry dieback. At the moment, there's only one model, and it's that. So it actually is a role, I could throw it back to the council and say, you know, the council should be advocating that there are different standards for different types of tracks. It used to be 3 standards under the regional parks management plan, but with carry dieback, if they're carry dieback tracks, they're getting one built standard like this.
Do you not agree that the Natural Pest Management Strategy applies to DOC too, and DOC aren't doing that? And so I'm asking, where's this coming
well,
from?
I think that's, I think that's something definitely council should take up.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Turner. Deputy Chair, just if we could make sure we stick to the formation of the forum, if possible. Kia ora.
Thank you, tēnā koutou katoa, and thank you for your presentation. I'm hugely supportive. I always prefer community-led and driven initiatives, and we should get out of the way. Having said that, do you need us to have a look at what those options might look like for you in terms of council support and what status the forum might hold? I'm thinking of Manukau Harbour Forum, which has been around for a long time but doesn't always get things, you know, to where it needs to be, because it's a forum and doesn't have governing body around it, perhaps. I don't know, but is that what you're asking of us? Can we just have a look at what it looks like? Because you can go and set it up yourself. I mean, that's fine, but actually you need a bit more oomph in there, I think.
We thought taking the opportunity to talk to they could kick that process off. If the formation of the deed is to come back to this committee in the near future, then this could be a topic to think about at the same time. The deeds and the forum could be quite interlinked, really.
Right, thank you for that.
Kia ora, Deputy Chair, and yes, I've just got Megan to, as I've seconded it, unless Councillor Turner would like to second it, but just adding this, Councillor Henderson well, we'll type it up, but it's largely saying to report back on potential formation as part of the, it's not technically the deed, but it could be part of the, it's all related. So, because it would be nice to know, especially if you want us to be setting it up, not local board, and what resourcing, then it should maybe be decision from the Planning, Environment and Parks Committee. Yeah, but, I'm happy if the local board wants to move this forward, but I think we could have all of that. And if we do have a workshop, obviously you'll all be invited to that discussion too.
Kia ora, sorry, Chair. If I could also just respond to Councillor Dalton in terms of scope. Again, just the important thing here is this is a statutory area. So there's an act that sets all of these out and these objectives, including integrated management and enhancement. And I guess, I've spoken with 3 ministers of DOC now about this, and they've all said, yeah, great, when's council ready? That's the question, because being nationally significant, my view, this is just my view, is central government has a role, not the lead role, but they should be have skin in the game in this as well. If they've designated it through an act of parliament as nationally significant, they need to back that up. So.
Kia ora, and there's the additional C, if that's okay, Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Deputy Chair as well. Councillor Darby.
Yeah, thanks. Councillor Dalton's question is sort of drawing out what I was wondering as well. So you're looking at a forum, not just to discuss, even though your slide says to discuss, the outcomes are governance over the area. And I'm looking at our advisory panel. So have you explored and put a line through the advisory panel model? Some of the advisory panels have a lot of powers, like the urban design panel and the city centre advisory panel. So you put have you considered the value of it becoming a panel versus a forum? And I guess when you're talking forum, you're talking more like Hauraki Golf or Tupuna Maunga Forum with quite specific governance decision-making authority. That's my question.
Thanks, Councillor Darby. We haven't ruled out any particular model. Whatever works is obviously what we would like to use. It needs to have a certain level of status, which perhaps a panel doesn't necessarily have, but it's certainly something that I would think about more.
Yeah, so it's sort of early days. It's seeding the idea and then, looking for general support to. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Easy.
Thank you. Mayor Brown.
Thank you for that. I just recently found an old photo from 1963 of me surfing at Piha, which is probably before some of the people, the commentators here, were even born. One thing I have noticed, there's a hell of a lot more people living here out there than when I first started going surfing out there. I do support what you're trying to do, by the way, but my question is, of late, as more people arrive, they're living in more and more precarious positions. And after the recent flood, when I was in Karikara in particular, we visited a lot of houses that really should never have been built. It was just a matter of time before they slid into the drain. And you wonder, would you consider a population limit, for instance, on within the Waitakere Grange heritage area, because it doesn't include the towns, and it just or making it more difficult. Because the houses out there, we all see, we go out there regularly, they're more and more precarious with more and more complexity to keep up where they used to be. And the houses are getting more expensive and wiping out bigger. And there's no sewage systems, and that's irrigating the ground. It's a disaster happening in some ways. And so I would like to see whether you, as the people who are pushing this and represent the area, would consider some form of population limit or some form of making it more difficult for everyone else to arrive. I know that would make it sound like you're trying to stop many more neighbours arriving, Sandra, but I just feel that...
Yeah, Greg, you're going to lock us all out?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. That's a good question and a good point. Sandra and I were around when the Act was formed back in 2008, and one of the drivers was that we recognised that the area had limited subdivisional potential and limited carrying ability. And so the idea of the Act was to slow down and eventually stop subdivisions from happening. And back then, from memory, there was about 1,500 titles could be eked out of the area. I believe possibly about half of those have been eked out since 2008. But there's certainly, in terms of development, it's going to hit a ceiling with.
It's hit the ceiling in Kerikeri. I mean, some of them should not have been there.
Yeah, in fact, we might have overshot the ceiling and we may have to go back even more. But population...
Nature's telling us the ceiling.
Yeah, population growth has been limited by the Act, and that was a deliberate feature of it, and it's something that, for the reasons you've outlined, I think is a very important part of the Act.
And the second bit, I know there's not quite a thing, but Councillor Ken put up some pictures. That's all a response. The working track rules and stuff is an overreaction from Cave Creek. And I remember I was brought in to look at a whole lot of things after that, and they went from having no rules to far too many rules. So again, this is what New Zealand does. We have nothing, and then we lurch to one side, and we've got to come back. But that's another one we've got to find the rule for. That wasn't a part of their stuff. But I support what you're doing, but I just feel that too many people is one of the biggest threats out there.
I'd agree.
But most of the regional park takes up 17,000 hectares of the whole heritage area. And as we found when we did the work before the legislation was put together, that most of those places had been built on, particularly in the coastal settlements. So there just ain't a lot of, they can't get into the regional park. So what we've got with a lot of those settlements is pretty well what we're ever going to get. Another thing about some of them are still about half batch owners and half permanent residents. So there's often tension between batch owners and permanent residents about the amount of infrastructure and development, with batch owners very much like to keep things the way they are. That's what attracted them there, and not too keen on things like footpaths. So I think that we're not going to get a huge amount of population growth there. We're much more likely to get growth in visitors. But even so, my family's been there since 1936. I haven't, because I was born after that. But I've got photographs of crowds on the beach that in like the 70s and 80s were bigger than anything we get there now, because people have got more choice, and a lot of people like going to the mall rather than surfing.
But people who visit don't build sewerage systems into the ground, and they don't do a whole lot of that. And the batches are being upgraded to massive retaining walls, huge things up on the top of the hill there in the way in. It just shocks me, and they're all going to fail.
I think, Mayor, we're probably going deeper than the discussion here, but part of that will be considered as part of our hazards plan change once the government allows us to change our plan. Member Henare, waiting very patiently.
Thank you for waking me up, Mr. Chair. Can you, Greg, point me to anything that mentions co-governance?
Depends how you define co-governance. The Act does talk about the creation of a deed, which is to provide iwi input into decisions concerning the public land at a very basic level.
That wouldn't mean co-governance, would it? That's not what the Act says.
It doesn't use that word, no. Co-governance has more of a political definition than a legal one.
It certainly does, and it looks as though it's scared off a few horses. Hey, in terms of where this work sits, how does that fit into the Act? And I heard Ed say that a number of DOC ministers are supportive of this move. Is there a legislative requirement needed? I mean, does there need to be an amendment to the Act to get this going, or not?
I believe the work is now underway, and there'll be a report coming back to this committee in a couple of months' time.
That's from who, Greg?
I've been advised previously, and it's been mentioned today at the meeting. So.
Okay. No, cool. Thank you, Bob.
Correct.
Cool. Member Handley, we can provide you and the Secretariat with those details, and you'll obviously be invited to any workshop or briefing or meeting that the deed is discussed, which should, I believe, discuss this at the same time, or in a connected or non-connected way. If we don't need to overcomplicate things. Councillor Lee.
Thank you. Good morning, colleagues. I'm glad Board Member Coney mentioned the regional park, because it's not mentioned in the presentation. Obviously, it's so obvious that you wouldn't mention it. But however, Parliament would not have considered the Waitakere Heritage Area of national significance without that regional park. And it seems to me that what you are bringing to our attention is a certain a vacuum of governance in relationship to at least the Waitakere Ranges Regional Park, because this council does not have a regional parks nor a parks committee. The parks responsibility is part of this committee, but it unfortunately comes pretty low on the priority scale. We don't get that much time to deal with parks, let alone regional parks. My question is, in regard to a forum, would it not be within your present powers as local board leaders to actually institute a forum between the West, if you like, or Waitakere local boards, and set up a forum under your responsibility, given the democratic power that you have as representatives, elected representatives of the people of the Waitakere area? Why not initiate that yourselves?
It's certainly something that we've thought about. We thought that it was diplomatic and appropriate and proper to discuss this with the governing body as well, so that there can be a joint discussion about the best option.
So this is a kind of a consultation with the governing body in regard to contingent plans you might have, as it were, sort of.
Yes, essentially.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Leone.
Oh, kia ora. Look, I just wanted to say I fully tautoko and support what you've put up, but I did have a question for Member Ashby, and it is probably more of a side issue, because we're talking about heritage here and so on, and tikanga Māori as well as part of that, and I know that co-governance has been raised. I just wanted to ask Member Ashby, how does it feel when we still have elected members that can't pronounce names of places and iwi in te reo Māori, and do we as council need to be doing more as that of that, because it's 2024 and there's so much free resources out there, and I think at this point, I still think it's really important that we raise that issue. So kia ora, Ed, if you could just respond to that.
Kia ora, Councillor. Thank you for the question. I mean, yes, I guess is the short answer. We should all be doing better and improving. I guess if I can speak on behalf of Kawerau Amaki, you know, this is our heartland, our the beating heart of our tribe, our identity. If we're not here, we're nowhere. And I've been growing our team. We're the only iwi without a marae, but I've been growing our team, and it's interesting seeing it through their eyes. I've been around too long, so I'm used to it, but seeing they're new to all of this, new to working with Crown and Council and different people, and seeing how they're talked about and how their rohi is talked about, it's very interesting. So yeah, look, I think just trying to be polite, I suppose, but yeah, there's always more work that can be done. I guess for me, I'm just really keen I've got my eye on the prize of trying to get better outcomes for this heritage area, because that at the end of the day is why it was set up. Whether I'm here on behalf of Kawerau or not, that's what the actual outcome is national significance, integrated management, enhancement, and yes, there is a role for Kawerau and statute in the mix there. But thank you for your question. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you, Councillor Leone. Well, thank you all for presenting. We have no more questions. We will see how much advice we can get to that discussion for the deed of acknowledgement. I do think it's connected, but I think they are. I don't want one to hold up the other. I'm assuming my personal view is that it would be good to have the governing body or the Planning, Environment and Parks Committee support behind it, but also I would believe there'd be nothing stopping the local board setting a process up with Te Kawerau Amaki itself in case the governing body didn't support that direction or something. So thank you for the work here, all four of you, and I think it's an exciting way forward, and it can only mean better outcomes for Waitakere Rangers. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, councillors.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
Cool. Would you like your name recorded?
Record that, please. Thank you.
Councillor Turner would like his vote opposed. Any abstentions? Thank you. Right. I think we might do item 8, see how long it takes, and then, yeah. Oh, there's no extraordinary business. Right. We might just pause for a bathroom and water, cup of tea break. Say 2 minutes past 12, we'll come back.
Kia ora everyone, thank you. Sorry, a couple minutes late for those online. We will go now to the allocation of the Sport and Recreation Regional Program Grant for financial years 2023, 24 and 25. Right, we have Sean and Nick and Pippa who are coming up. I think Sean is leading this, but with Pippa and Nick as very capable supporting acts. So kia ora everyone. We have had a drop-in on this, remember, so those who attended would have got had a lot of questions answered, so hopefully we don't have to repeat too much here if you have questions, but we will let Nick, are you going to lead off? Cool.
Ngā mihi kia koutou, ko Nick Harris-Takuingoa. I am here with Pippa Somerville, Manager Sport and Recreation, and Sean Watkins, Grant Portfolio Lead. I am Team Leader in Sport and Recreation. We are speaking directly to our report today, and we're here about the allocation of the Sport and Recreation Regional Program Grant. Community grants are a key tool for implementing Council's strategic vision. They're a direct and tangible way to support the aspirations of Auckland's communities. Pursuant to the community grants policy, Council runs a regional program of grants, one of which is Sport and Recreation, and this grant that we're here to discuss today is one of three in the Sport and Recreational Regional Grant Program. The purpose of the grant is really focused on participation. It's about achieving affordable and accessible options for people, particularly children and young people, to participate in physical activity, recreation and sport. My colleague Sean has been running this grant funding round, and I'm going to hand over to him to talk you through the recommendations. Thank you.
Do that. Thank you, Nick. Kia ora committee. So as Nick said, that the purpose of the grant is to provide operational funding for regional programs that enable children and young people to participate in sport and recreation activities. So this round was opened from the 19th of February to the 10th of March 2024, and it combined the budgets of FY24, which was $328,000, and FY25, which was $508,000, for a total of $836,000 from this round. Due to the long-term plan not being adopted yet, the FY25 budget won't be confirmed until July 1. Therefore, the recommendations have been split between FY24 and FY25. So a total of 8 organisations have been recommended to receive funding. So that means 6 programs from the FY24 budget, which total the full amount of $328,000. And then 7 programs from the FY25 budget, totaling the full amount of $508,000. So this includes 4 programs that will receive a 2-year grant, and 1 program that has been split between 2 years for budgetary logistical reasons, just so the numbers match up. So I'll take the report as read and am available for any questions. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And Councillor Dalton said she'd like to move this, and do I have a seconder? Councillor Bartley, awesome. Thank you. I think the report is very clear and the drop-in was very clear. Are there any questions? Councillor Filipaina.
Kia ora hea mana. Tēnā koutou katoa to our team. Again, and I'll keep on asking this question, the feedback for those that are ineligible, that goes back to them in regards to saying, look, this is the reason why they've been declined. And do we offer any assistance to get them up to the level they should be, to at least be looked at?
Thank you, Filipaina, through the chair. So definitely, as we aim to support the applications that were considered ineligible, maybe just because of the way they've approached their application. So sometimes they applied for something that So if they applied specifically for like wages only, or like the introduction of a new role, that is considered ineligible. But if they were applying for the actual cost of the program and stuff that we could potentially report on and show the return on investment from our allocation, then that would be then eligible. So there are certain declined projects in here, programs in here that will get that support, and we'll work together with them to make a more robust and more essentially eligible application next round. Others have applied that were considered events, so we'll point them to the right direction of the events grant that council run, and also a different sort of variety of smaller scale grants for the small scale programs, because this is a regional program grant.
So we do help them.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, oh, no, that's right.
Yeah. So, yeah,
I just wanted to make sure. So then it'll be good for them to say, oh, okay, this is where we made our mistake. We won't do that and everything else. One more part through you, Chair, and that is, have you thought of having at least an online or the ability for those that cannot come into the drop-in session to have at least an online, or the ability to talk to you directly if they can't make the drop-in session?
So the drop-in session did have the online. So the drop-in session that we had a few weeks ago, we had a few councillors that were attended online, and we sent out the report beforehand. Is that what you meant, or do you mean a drop-in session with?
There have been some drop-in sessions. And Chair, just this might be sort of at you and nothing around the staff, but there have been some drop-in sessions with the ability to go online, but some don't. I just want to try and get some consistency for those that can't go in there physically to go and drop on. That's all. And I think, Nick, it's not targeted with this. I just having the ability with any of the other grants that you maybe have oversight with, and that's all I wanted to sort of put on the table.
Through the chair, yeah. Thank you, Councillor. Yes, agree that having an option to join online will be good practice, and we'll certainly do that with everything we do going forward, and can also confirm that the drop-in we did for this grant did have the online option as well. Thank you.
Can you take that on board with the other drop-in sessions that have the grants and events funding, just to give those that cannot come in, that may have an operation on their knee, something like that? Thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor. Kia ora, Councillor. I think we have requested all to be online. There was a drop-in of something the other day that wasn't. I'm not sure if it was to do with planning, environment, parks, that wasn't online. But all events are next year. Yeah. Right, I think you can step back. There are no other. Oh, sorry. Oh, cool. Just checking of the Councillor Dalton and Bartley. We added the D from our discussions last time, but I haven't checked with either. I mean, we've discussed it, Councillor Dalton, but not Councillor Bartley. So happy to remove it if you're not happy with it, Councillor Bartley. But there has been a number of discussions over time that grants at this level should be delegated to staff. I'm sort of understand both sides of the argument, but we haven't. The discussion this time was that it would be against policy. So we would need to make a broader discussion on these. I'm happy for them to still come to committee, but we did have feedback last time, I think from Councillor Darby especially, but this would just allow advice to come back. Councillor Darby, this was just we were adding D around advice because I did ask if this quantum in the future will be under 500,000, so whether it should be delegated to staff, but we don't have that mechanism yet. But I'm happy to remove it if Councillor Bartley is not happy to. It's the seconder.
No, I just want to make sure that the committee gets exposure of this grant and what we do with it and who we're benefiting out in the communities. Because if we don't have exposure to something, we're quite ignorant to it. And then when it comes to funding, LTP or annual plan, we seem to just want to get rid of it because we don't have that exposure to it. So that's my worry.
100%, and it was just the discussion because every time we bring these fantastic grants forward, often councillors say it's a waste of time or it shouldn't be coming to us. That's not my thought, but we can't change that at all unless we have advice to change or not change that. So if you're happy with the D, that's fine, but if you don't want it there, I'm happy for it to be removed as well. It was just in case it came up again.
Yeah, I'm happy to remove it.
Okay, cool.
I want them to still keep coming to this committee.
Cool. Thank you.
No, look, I know that the staff are here, so I know we're not into the debate, so I won't say anything, but no,
Actually, I don't know.
I'll wait till the debate.
Oh, okay. I mean, if you want to leave it there, leave it there.
No, I'm happy for it to be removed. It was just because it kept coming up every time and there is no mechanism for us to have the conversation because it's policy for it to come here. So it's gone. Thank you. Did you have a question, Councillor? No. Okay. Thank you all for the work. I know there's a mammoth amount of work that goes into this before it gets here. Appreciate that. And now if you could step away so we can debate about the item, not at you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dalton, did you want to say anything as the mover?
No, thank you. But thanks for the opportunity. Just glad to see that money still getting out the door to the organisations that need it. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Filipaina?
Chair, just want to acknowledge the staff and I think collectively across all that you have at your committee, you and Councillor Dalton. Because I know how hard it is, and those that have been here from the beginning, we know how hard it is around the allocation. We know how hard it is around getting the panel together and then discussing that and then bringing it back to us. So I want to acknowledge the staff. And Chair, the reason I asked about the online one is that, as Councillor Bartley said, you know, having the ability to see what our community in our respective wards. I know that we're regional councillors, but having the ability to see what they've come, because we all get phone calls around the monies, whether it be 30,000, 120,000. So, Chair, just want to acknowledge the staff. Kia ora. Thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor Filipaina, and yeah, just support the direction and thank you. And a bit of context too, Councillor. Councillor Dalton and I have asked for workshops on these things and been refused due to timing. So the drop-ins have been the end or the additional support for councillors and Haukura members. Right, all those in favour? Aye. Are there any opposed? Perfect. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 9, the Whenua Pai structure plan. Where is it? Warren. Kia ora. And just first of all, apologies from Chair Atkinson. They have a meeting today. She would have spoke in favour. She's spoke to Councillor Dalton and I, and so they're quite happy with the direction.
Tēnā koutou katoa ko Warren Aho. I'll give apologies for Erin, who's ill at the moment, so I'll talk through the report with you, and we have a PowerPoint, so I'll just go through that briefly and then answer any questions. So, some of you may recall, it's going back 8 years, that we approved a Whenua Pai structure plan in 2016, and the point of this work is to update that report to take account of some of the new circumstances and some of the new strategies which have been prepared since then. So we also will signal that we'll start our public engagement mid-year or later in mid-year, and then bring that document back here for final approval. So I guess this is in need of updating. It was the first structure plan that we completed, and it was before the unitary plan. So all of the decisions, recommendations and decisions which came out for the unitary plan came out after this. We didn't know what was going to be in at this stage. So it doesn't have any of the zoning ideas and so on from the unitary plan. It's so it's dated in a number of different ways. It still had a vision, and you can see the vision up there on the PowerPoint, and it's still intended to continue with this and re-emphasise in many ways the vision and the objectives that you see there. It's which will continue. So those are those 7 themes there, and they will they will permeate right through, and you see some of those: sustainable urban development, quality built urban development. We have moved quite a way since then, so it's a good one to update. Well connected, really around the commuting and the freight potential from an area which has 3 motorways intersecting just to the south of it. Probably the most unique feature has always been for Whenuapai, the airbase, and that clearly will continue, and that's a strong part of it, the assumptions going ahead. Provision of infrastructure is something that created some problems for us, or challenges, earlier in the 21-22, which caused us to withdraw the plan change that we had at the time in order to relook at some of the financing. The enhanced natural environment, in particular, this review of the structure plan will enable us to add in a number of flood-prone strategies which are not included and take any account of this. So there's a lot more. There's a lot more information now around climate change and on flooding. So we'll be able to take those into account, and of course the provision of quality open spaces. So there's the structure plan on screen, and that's where we got to. You see the grey area is the area of the Air Force Base, and then when you look to the south of that, you'll see quite a lot of proposed business land, and then areas of various residential densities around the Air Force Base and further to the north and to the west. We will review those areas, I think, and in particular look a bit more about the noise issues from the Air Force Base, and perhaps include more light industrial areas around the Air Force Base rather than residential. So since 2016, we've had some development, which nowadays is creating a bit more pressure for further development in the future. So we've had a couple of plan changes go through, one a light industrial, one Speeding Road, and one a recent decision, Brigham Creek Road, for residential areas. We've also got a lot of pressure around private plan changes coming through, and we have had quite a lot of pressure around fast-track consents. So whether or not the land is rezoned, we have pressure anyway in the area. We've also had some new developments on the infrastructure with Supporting Growth Alliance almost completing their notices of requirement project for state highway and arterial routes, and it's not entirely completed, but it certainly starts to set the network for the future of those roads within the Whenuapai area as part of that wider northwest area. We've also got Watercare looking to get approval for a new wastewater pump station, and we've had land purchased already for a park. And the last point on that slide, the development contributions work is continuing, and that work should be completed by the end of the year, and that will give us a good idea around the funding of infrastructure overall. And that work is being done with the Development Program Office, and it will really help to be able to assess the cost of the infrastructure in the future and how we might partner with developers to deal with that. So the next document that we've been looking at is the Future Development Strategy, which was finalised at the end of last year and replaces the Future Urban Land Supply. In that document, there is an area to be developed reasonably soon around business land, and that shows up as that orange colour in the map. For the rest of Whenuapai, there is the dates for development have been pushed out further, so they're around 2035 to 2045 or 50. That hasn't prevented development being applied for, and so while it's pushed out, and those aren't the date, or those are the dates that the FDS sets out. The FDS also sets out in Appendix 7 that you can allow for consideration of out-of-sequence proposals which provide bulk infrastructure, and we're intending that the development contributions work will help us deal with that. The other key point is that the area has become a joint priority between government and Crown agencies, and this means that we're getting further emphasis on development within this area, particularly housing, so it's particularly from MHUD and KO. But we've also got our own, we've also got an investment plan being developed by Auckland Unlimited for this area as well. So that's around looking at jobs. So there's a push for housing and a push for business development. And even with the later dates in the FDS, there are still infrastructure improvements being planned. So we really need to take those into account. So the, whoops. So the options in the report, which are set out there, are do nothing, which is not supported. We have looked at just partially updating the plan, but that one is still not supported because there is a considerable amount of pressure in the area, and we are better to look at the third option to fully update the area. and create, if you like, a catchment-wide approach, an area-wide approach to planning in the future. And all of the documents that I've talked about look at Whenuapai as a broad area for funding as a whole. The third option, which we support, although we say in the report to you that it won't include a review of Red Hills North and Whenuapai West, we now think it's a better idea to include all of the future urban areas. So there's two smaller areas to the north and west that we would add in to make to complete the future urban area. And that's the presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Kia ora, Warren.
Chair.
Thank you for this, and for the councillors. At the beginning, I just acknowledged, I'm sure you've heard from her too, that Chair Atkinson would have liked to have been here, but was at a meeting, and she's supportive of the direction. So, Councillor Henderson.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, and fully support option 3, and thank you so much for your work. 2 questions, Chair. So, number 1, have you been engaging with the Upper Harbour Ecology Network? They've been doing some really great advocacy work on the blue-green spatial plan idea.
Yeah, thanks for the question. We did some years ago, as a part. So once we get approval to do some of this, to do this update, then we will be talking to a range of stakeholders, both environmental and business as well. So they're on the list.
Fantastic. And this is a bit of a cheeky one, Chair, but kind of noting the wider northwest catchment area here and the provision of infrastructure, will this touch on the lack of community facilities such as public swimming pools? And would this be the advocacy sort of lever for this?
We will be. We have been engaging with our community facilities group, and I guess it's what they come up with. It'll also take into account that nearby is Westgate, sorry, and Westgate may be a better location in the future, but we'll have to see how it pans out.
Thank you so much.
I'm not going to promise anything.
Fair enough, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Member Ashby, kia ora.
Kia ora, Warren. Thank you for the report. Yeah, very supportive of a broader catchment-based approach here. There's a lot of pressure, as you've said. Just a couple of questions from me. The first is, what will engagement with Ngāti Whātua and Te Kauramaki look like going forward? And then the second question is, picking up on the previous engagement in 2016, how are those values, I guess, can be incorporated into the structure plan? And I guess I raised that in specific reference to the RPS provision B652 subclause 7. So this is Māori cultural assessment and structure planning, plan change processes do all the following. So it's very directive. Identify mana whenua values associated with the landscape, identify sites and places appropriate for scheduling, and then reflecting mana whenua values. So it's a very directive, you shall do these things. So it's just a question in terms of, is that going to be in the work program when you do that engagement? Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for that. There's a number of questions in that. We thought it was very important to get approval from this committee before we started engagement with iwi, but that's definitely right near the top of the list. So you'll be hearing about some meetings coming up in the next few weeks. We have got, we were supplied last time around with a CVA from Kauramaki, and we'll clearly be going back with that and saying, is there anything you want to update about that? And if there's an ability there to look at how we might schedule some sites, we won't be doing that within the structure plan, but it could be something that we do in time for the unitary, for them to be added to the unitary plan schedule update. Is that all of it? Yep.
Thank you. Member Henare, online.
Oh no, I bailed. As you can see, I said, "Oh no, thanks."
Kia ora, sorry. Councillor Turner.
Thank you. Just the airport, just sort of, is it life there? Is it a permanent fixture, or is it going to run, leave the area eventually?
I'm a planner, and I'm not a. I can't foresee the future there. I know that we've all, from our past engagement with the NZDF, they have been very clear at all times that the Air Force Base is there to stay. We will be, and therefore, we will plan around that.
Thank you. I'm not a planner either, but just in layperson's terms, anyone looking at that would say, wow, we're going to put all this around an airport? It seems like a fundamental failure in the design concept. Thank you.
So clearly, as we do some of this planning and be well aware of the Air Force Base, the key issue there is the noise emissions, particularly for engine testing. And we had some pretty exhaustive work done on it last time around, and we'll review that and do some extra work on that as part of this. Aeroplanes have generally got quieter, so we'll use some new noise contours probably, but the idea will be probably to make sure that in the noisiest parts we make sure that we have light industry or some other uses rather than residential.
Thank you. I would just make the comment that I live on the north head of the Manukau Harbour, and depending on the wind condition, you would think that the jets at Mangere Airport were landing on your driveway. So I just, I'm only just a person, but that's, yeah, thank you.
Warren, maybe just a brief explanation that we do already have quite strict controls around the airbase, and that part of what we did through the FTS was to add that more industrial, so there wouldn't be as many residents. And it's not a commercial airport either, so it's not like a Mangere situation. But do you want to just maybe talk briefly about that it is quite a restricted space?
Yes, the Air Force Base itself does not have a lot of aircraft movements. It does have quite a lot of helicopter movements. We've exhaustively, last time, reviewed all of that and made sure that the amenity value of housing is not compromised by this. So we'll be doing the same again. The controls are pretty tight, and the Air Force personnel that we'll be working with are well aware of some of the concerns, and we will have some debates with them around just exactly how we can deal with contours. So that was covered in the hearing back in about 2021 when we were dealing with the plan change around there.
Not convinced, but thank you. And thank you for the hard work.
No worries. Councillor Walker.
Sure. Got a few questions. I'll just make a couple of quick observations, Mr. Chair. So my understanding is that the government of the day confirmed Whenuapai Air Force as a going concern for quite some time into the future at its last review, and has continued to invest money in it. I think it'll be there for a while. And I just make the observation, having a secondary airport in Auckland is not necessarily a bad thing. But To my questions, Warren, and thank you for the opportunity to have a chat the other day. So just go through them pretty quickly. My understanding is that there's already been quite a significant amount of resource applied to Whenuapai, so the earlier structure planning work. So yes, there is some additional work, but there's a powerful base there. That's correct, isn't it?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, that's great. The other question just goes to transport. You've mentioned that as part of infrastructure. My view is that would also be including walking and cycling mobility within the area, so that's part of the structure planning process?
Yes, the local board have done quite a lot of work around walking and cycling, and we've discussed that with parks, and we will be looking to include walking and cycling as a significant mode of transport. Yep.
Okay, and then the other question just goes to identifying recreational requirements, particularly playing fields and the like, and conceivably that could feed into development contributions. That's part of what you're addressing?
Yes, yes. So the development contributions work assumes a number of parks in that area.
Okay, that's great. And the last question is just around urgency. There's some urgency around this because of the plan changes and the like, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And would you and Councillor Watson like to move and second this one?
Happy.
Kia ora, thank you. Councillor Darby.
Can we just go to the recommendations, please? I just want a clarification, because in the report, option 3 is not as option 3 in the presentation. So option 3 in the presentation is the current structure plan and taking into account Red Hills and Whenuapai West. Is that right, Warren?
Yes. Yes, so that's why I mentioned that. So I would, so I guess A could be an update to the structure plan and extension into 2 areas, if you.
Happy with that, Mr. Chair?
Not the current, it's actually the current plus.
Yeah, that's correct.
So can we make that specific, because that's important?
So we could add something to the effect of including those 2 areas, which including Red Hills North and Whenuapai West.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Darby. I did ask Megan before, and she had said that that was the intention of the original resolution, but I think it is important to probably add.
All right. Yep.
Happy to move, Mr. Chair?
Yep, you're both there. Councillor Watson, you may have some questions.
Yeah. Just 2 questions and one brief comment when appropriate, Mr. Chair. Warren, you just want to really check or bolster up the 2 big concerns with the community out there is the airbase, as Councillor Turner was alluding to, and the other one is to do with the sort of potentially ad hoc, ad lib development that people have been concerned about. So just in respect of the whole protection of the flight operations and engine testing. Now you'll recall that the Ron Mark back in 2019, he signed a certificate exempting the activity of engine testing at Whenuapai Air Base from the Resource Management Act, and that was a very unusual action to take, but essentially that the minister had the power to exempt activities for the purpose of national security, and that was after a Environment Court ruling in favour of Neil Construction to do with the whole business of engine testing, because engine testing is it's not just like people running their the engine in their speedboat for 5 minutes. It's a little bit more intrusive than that. So
that still stands, Warren, that whole saga we went through there with Neil Housing and the, you know, the very timely and welcome intervention of Minister Marks? Right.
Yes, that still stands.
Okay, all right. So that's good. And the second bit just goes to this notion, and you captured it yourself in the options analysis, and the perception that has existed out in Whenuapai for some time now that that, you know, development was getting brought forward way quicker than infrastructure and everything that was prepared. Now, in the cons there, you've made the observation that conceivably the update of the structure plan may be perceived as the council wanting to bring forward development in Whenuapai in the areas identified in the FDS. You know, some of those areas, most of which they are beyond 2035 and 2050. In actual fact, this process is more likely to ensure that development's only going to occur when it's ready, isn't it? Isn't it going to, in reality, be the opposite of that?
It's trying to ensure that development will take place at the time that infrastructure funding is agreed. And that's the key part of the development contributions work to be done, which we didn't have in 2016.
Okay. All right. Mr. Chair, I'll make a comment at the appropriate time. You're right.
Thank you. We have no more questions, so we'll get Warren to step back, and then either Councillor Watson or Walker, you decide who would like to speak, because you're the only speakers at this point. Councillor.
Just a very quick comment, Mr. Chair. This is long overdue. We have the resources to do it. It's urgent. There's huge community expectation, and it will enhance in generating a much higher level of environmental protection and better planning.
Councillor Watson.
Yeah. So thanks. Just a couple of comments from my point of view, and it really goes back to the original structure plan, which was adopted by the council in 2016. That outlines 7 themes, and out in Whenuapai, the main themes that have been causing concern, other than the obvious one of the provision of infrastructure or the lack of infrastructure, has been to do with the provision of open spaces and also the natural environment. So there's been it's an area where there are a lot of community groups who do a lot of work around about, you know, preserving the natural environment, and it is also an area where there is a massive infusion of population, where you have these huge developments that open up, like, you know, other parts of Auckland, but on a scale probably not matched by some of these other places, and a lot of the housing is this mixed housing, urban, and this THAB. So they're cramming them in like sardines, and what is really essential is hopefully what the structure plan delivers is a kind of a protection in terms of the environment, the blue-green spatial network, planting, waterways and parks, and also the provision of open space. So one of the big concerns of the people out here has been that these massive big developments are going in, and you've got these little postage stamps of provision of parks. Now the council has bought up, fortunately has been relatively fast-seeing and buying up land in advance, so there already has been some significant purchases made for parks, bigger parks, but I guess it's more on that neighbourhood level, that not just here but across Auckland, where that is provided for in advance, and communities should have a sense that this is going to happen, and the structure plan process will hopefully give that. I contrast a number of developments that used to come before the council but now go to the local boards, where we were keeping a reasonably close check
on the provision of open space, whether it was in Takanini or Millward or wherever it happened to be. We had a bit of a line of sight of it. We don't get that so much now. So it's important, I think, that in this location anyway, that this process really deals to this concern in the community to do with open space provision and preserving and working with the natural environment. A little bit like happened with old councils like North Shore and Birkenhead, where if you go around parts of the shore, Glenfield, you have these lovely green strips that have been preserved that were on the rubbish land. There was no use to the developers, but they were preserved for the largely working class suburbs there. So we didn't have little playgrounds, but we had tracts of bush that the kids went and played in and fished and stuff, and they are now like gold. So that was a kind of visionary type of planning regime. I doubt if they had structure plans, but they were practical, and now the generations now, reap the benefit. And that's particularly the case when you look at this THAB and mixed housing urban development, which is very intense, is very concretised, if there's such a word, where the little postage stamps, there's not a lot of kicking balls around, and they kick the ball and end up on the road. So I'm appreciative of the people that have been working on this for a long time now on the council, and hopefully we get a really good outcome in Whenuapai, which should then perhaps be duplicated elsewhere if it isn't already done in terms of those communities, massive big communities, essentially of tens of thousands of people that are going to be there for the next century. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Good, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, just a couple of things. Thanks, Chair. And just want to talk with the words of Councillors Watson and Walker. The local councillors, a fantastic contribution. I support option 3 hugely. And as Councillor Walker said, I think much better environmental outcomes that will result from this. And so that's really good to see. Just a quick plug while I've got the mic. For the provision of aquatic services in the northwest area, where there's an absolutely dire need, I don't need to give you the full pitch, but I've been advancing a community-led approach idea where we actually sort of take it off the hands of council and capital, and we actually get local board members and community leaders together, setting up a vehicle, raising the money, doing the legwork, and working with that northwest community. And that's across borders, Henderson, Massey, Upper Harbour and Rodney as well. Also seeking a fair share of development contributions is another key element to this, and actually you can fund pools through a reasonably recent law change through the DCs. So just want to flag our interest in that from a Waitakere perspective, if you don't mind, and I'd just be delighted to engage with that limb of the work as it pertains to the northwestern area, so kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you, Councillor. Member Henare.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make the point, that all the contributions this morning on this issue, and I just live across the water from Whenuapai, and I can hear the engine testing even on a bad day when the wind's going the other way. Not that it bothers me, because you get used to it, but with all of the issues facing that area, like infrastructure, like jamming people in to the smallest possible places, we still let it happen. And I'm not sure whether it's council's fault, whether it's government fault, or whatever, but it continues to happen. So, all of the councillors that have said something on this issue raise at least one of those issues in terms of infrastructure, in terms of population growth, blah, 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 blah. But we continue to let it happen. So I suppose, and it's not a question to Warren or anybody, but it's a question to ourselves, I suppose, is how come we allow it to happen? And it seems to me that there has been one strategy there that does work, and that's the buying of land. And I know we're not, we don't win $29 million every week so that we can afford it. But it seems to me that there's something missing in the debate, and that is that we allow it to happen, and then we have to figure out how we're going to pay for it. Because, you know, like the mayor has said and everybody else has said, there isn't a pot of gold that we can continually go and dip our sticky beaks in if we want to do something. I mean, I like Councillor Henderson, and the issue of a swimming facility out west. And there's 200,000-300,000 people out this way, and we only got 1 or 2 places to swim, other than the beaches and maybe the odd lake or creek, and you wouldn't want to swim in those. So, you know, that's the comment that I'm making. Thank you.
Kia ora, Member Henare, and just, a couple of brief comments for me, and it is a little bit to your comments, Member Henare. Although we don't have control over how many people come here or are born here, we do have some control, and this is us taking some of that lead. The issue is for these suburbs is that we often haven't been in control. So most of the area has been zoned through private plan changes. There were special housing areas under the last national government that all brought development forward far quicker than our plans had. The future development strategy that we all supported last year, led by Jacques and team and others, you know, will help us, and the work Warren's been doing a very long time trying to catch up with all those approvals that kind of come out of sequence. This is trying to bring that all back together and trying to bring that infrastructure into the right place and address the funding and financing. Will we and are we able to address it all? No, and we're finding out constantly around this committee that things come to us well before we thought they would, and we have to deal with them when we get there, and then go and beg governments or other parts of our community for that infrastructure funding to try and catch up. So our community does need housing. We shouldn't be pushing back, in my opinion, on that. We heard from groups this morning how important housing is. Our issue is how quickly and where can we catch up to make sure people's lives are better, because they're not stuck in traffic, they have a local park to play in, they have a library, a pool. So none of those things are easily addressed, but this structure plan will help this community at least start to feel like they are playing a part, and at least push developers, including government and council, into the right directions for that funding, so it's a little more coherent for our communities who end up on the bearing the brunt of bad decisions, but also feeling the welcoming nature of some of these homes and some of these communities where we are getting it right ahead of the curve. So thank you very much. I thought I was the last speaker, but I'll pass on to Councillor Lee, who would like to also speak. Kia ora. You have a comment, Councillor Lee, or no? Oh, sorry. All good. Okay. All those in favour? Any opposed? No. Thank you. Right. We will try. Normally I would break for lunch here, but I think my assumption is, and it might jinx it, the next 3 items should be fairly quick. So let's try and get them done. Then we'll go to lunch, and then we'll come to the confidential after lunch. If that's okay.
Move that recommendation? Or, JB, do you want to move that? I'll second it.
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I don't know yet.
I'm happy to second Councillor Darby, but I know that Councillor Bartley has some questions, and we'll have the presentation.
Come on, JB, come on. Make some
Carl?
money.
Kia ora, Carl. We're not trying to rush you. We're happy to see the presentation. It does seem fairly straightforward, and our local boards are in favour of the direction, but if you could just go through the presentation, thank you.
Okay. Ngā mihi o te wā, kia koutou, ke eke pānu ko aho e mahi ana, he te team leader portfolio review, brackets acting, aho ko Carl me taku ingoa, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Oh, lovely, you got my slide up, excellent. So really my report is really just introducing a few pieces of housekeeping. It's the disposal of some properties inside the Unlock Panmure and Unlock Northcote HLPP areas for urban renewal. If I could have my next slide, please. Oh, there's a button. Oh, well, we'll just have to take it as read. Thank you. So with Unlock Panmure, we have 3 properties sitting in what's called the Gateway West development area. Gateway West is right at the entrance to the main shopping street, so it's very prominent. As you can see from the slide on the picture on the right, the properties in green are covered in the original HLPP resolution. The properties in orange, 3 of them, they were still being held by AT for the Eastern Busway for road widening purposes, and so therefore couldn't be included in the original resolution in 2018. So they've now been released by AT, and so we are just bringing them forward for an approval so that we've observed due process. If I could just have the next slide, please. Thank you. So here we are, just aerial view and location map, and there are the properties, very much of their time. So if we go to the next slide. Thank you. So Northcote, Unlock Northcote, we just have one property here. It's a piece of tarmac. The original 2016 resolution included street addresses, but not legal descriptions. Legal descriptions were in an attachment to the report. This particular piece of tarmac at the time did not have a postal address and was not rateable. It has now been incorporated into 6 to 10 Killam Avenue, which is the building immediately to the, well, above it. So if I could have the next slide, please, the final slide. Thank you. So there it is in all its glory. So we really just need to get approval to dispose of this as part of the 6 to 10 Killam Avenue, which will unlock the site, the whole site, for urban renewal. Thank you very much. I'm ready to take questions.
Good, thank you, Carl. I think Councillor Bartley first has a question, and then Member Ashby.
Thank you for this, thank you. My question is trying to secure the proceeds of sale from the properties in Panmure back to projects in Panmure as per the local board resolution, but as it's stated in these resolutions, it doesn't say that.
Yes, I think, sorry, it was, I think, taken as read that the proceeds of the sales would be reinvested back into those locations. So in the case of the Panmure properties, that HLPP, the resolution said that it is to be funded from a number of sources, one of which is through the sale of assets within the HLPP area. So the funds would go back to Panmure.
Okay, so if that could be amended or changed in that B, that would be great.
Through the chair. So I'm just looking at B. I wonder if we could add, and I'll work with Sandra and Lata, something like allocated program budget and contribute towards identified projects within these areas, or something like that, which I think will meet your needs. We'll put a draft up and see what you think. Yeah.
Panmure, because most of these are in Panmure. I don't want them going to Northcote.
Yes, that's right.
Well, we don't want any of our little driveway to go to Panmure.
Yeah. You wouldn't know where Whanaupai is either. I thought this was the Whanaupai option.
Just kidding.
You guys just stay in Northcote.
Yeah, Member Ashby.
Kia ora. My question's specific to Northcote. Well, it's actually probably both, but your report talks about engagement with mana whenua since in Northcote, I think 2016. Can you just explain like who that actually is? Because mana whenua could mean anyone. It's like saying we engage with Europeans. So who did you actually engage with there? And then the second question is, not that it looks like a particularly exciting piece of property at Northcote, but is your policy, is that going to notify and provide an offer to mana whenua? Iwi?
Well, I could not claim to be an expert on the various rohe of the various mana whenua within Auckland, but our mana whenua engagement team and the priority location director engages with a list of 19 mana whenua entities within the Auckland region, specifically to those who have declared an interest in a particular area. And that engagement is ongoing.
Sorry, I'll just stop you there. I guess my point is, so you've engaged mana whenua. I know 2 iwi that hold mana there that have not been engaged. So when you use the word mana whenua, it hides or masks inadequate engagement is what I'm driving at. So it's good just for future if you actually come knowing who the partners are that you've actually engaged with, rather than just referring to them all as mana whenua, in the same way I might just refer to everyone in this room just as Pākehā or European. It's actually kind of polite to know that. Anyway, so, and the second question was just around the offering of, the policy around offering that to iwi.
Well, when the development site is prepared for marketing, iwi are invited to participate in the process and are encouraged to tender or to come up with development proposals.
And just to maybe clarify, the slight nuance, Member Ashby, is that these are not like the normal disposals which go to the mana whenua of the rohi first. This is part of the unlock and transform, which I would assume or hope that, well, I believe in the Northcote side of things, that the process from the beginning has been through the relevant mana whenua entities. These properties are sort of like part of those original decisions but missed off. Is that because the overall transform and unlock program included working with either development of mana whenua, potentially also the purchase? But
yes, these properties were simply, were left off in the first case, in the case of Panmure, because they were still being held by AT. In the case of Northcote, it was a simple omission. Yes, mana whenua engagement over the HLPP, the unlock Northcote and unlock Panmure HLPPs, has been carried out and is ongoing.
Yeah. If in the future, Carl, if you could pass back to the team that it would be good if, no matter what the disposal is, has the list of, like it would normally do on a normal disposal, has the list of each individual iwi that are, it would be, yeah. Cool. Thank you. Right. Any other questions? Right. All those in, we'll just see the addition for. Is that okay, Councillor Bartley? In these respective areas, which we'll split the two. Yeah, cool. Thank you, Carl. All those in favour? Any opposed? Perfect. Status update is fairly clear. I'll move. Councillor Dalton second. Any questions? All those in favour? Any opposed? Summary of planning, Environment and Parks Committee information, memos, workshops and briefings. Mover, Councillor Dalton. Seconder, Councillor Henderson. Any questions? All those in favour? Now, do we need a resolution to go into confidential? I'm happy to move. Councillor Ferry, second. All those in favour? And thank you very much, everyone. And we will go for a half hour, so we'll be back at 20 to 2, which obviously needed a calculator for that for some reason. And we'll see you in half an hour. Thank you.